Hello.
You know what this is? It's another lightsaber giveaway!
We are doing a brand new lightsaber giveaway for 90,000 subscribers. Own a Saber is sponsoring our giveaway, so go down below and check out the Google link to sign up. All you have to do is fill in the information and you'll be entered into the giveaway. And check out some of their quality lightsabers. They're running a 30% discount on some of their newest additions. Thank you, Own a Saber, for sponsoring our 90,000 subscriber lightsaber giveaway. Can't wait to see you at the end. Our story begins inside the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Anakin had learned a terrible truth. Chancellor Palpatine was a Sith Lord. However, when he entered, he wasn't greeted by the Jedi Master of the Order. Currently, Mace Windu was situated on the planet of Megiddo. He was leading his men in with an all-out war against the Separatists. Ironically, the clones and the Jedi were there to retrieve some sort of large kyber crystal. The reasons were unknown at the moment for why it was being retrieved, but it did have its purpose. Master Windu and his forces were making a great work against the Seppies. While Ki-Adi Mundi was not Mace Windu or Yoda, he was an experienced Jedi Master, and he held a seat on the High Council for decades. He took in the information and thought for a moment. He hadn't been close with Anakin, and aside from the Battle of Geonosis, they never worked with each other. This was one of the few times they were actually even in the same room with each other. Mundi, like a majority of the rest of the Council, did not trust Anakin. They had faith in him, but it was hard to trust someone who could act as erratic as Skywalker did. With Kenobi on Utapau having defeated the droid General Grievous, the Clone Wars were all but over. Of course, Mundi had to make a split-second decision. He had to decide if he would act now to save the Jedi Order, or if he should wait for Master Yoda or Master Windu's approval to make a move. It was clear since before the Battle of Coruscant that the Jedi Council was ready to make a move on the Senate, especially in a means to remove Palpatine from office. There was a plan laid out, and Mundi helped form it. Of course, the reason the plan didn't come to fruition was because of Obi-Wan and his belief that the Jedi could make a move on the Senate without jeopardizing the entire public perception of the Jedi Order. While they knew they were actively trying to save the galaxy, the collective galaxy, especially the Republic, would see it as a Jedi vying for more power on a galactic level, just like Dooku. It would completely tarnish their reputation. Obi-Wan suggested that having Anakin as a spy would do them better, and while it was agreed upon by the Collective Council to go this route, they made it clear that if Anakin failed, or if he revealed the truth to be what their suspicions were, then they would act quickly. Of course, if Palpatine was just a crazed man who was able to manipulate the entire Senate and avoid every possible coincidental chance of his plans failing, then he could really just spend a life gambling instead of being a politician. With that kind of luck, why grind to the top when you can just bet your way there? Though, when the Jedi decided on this plan, there was a notion that if Anakin failed, or if Palpatine was indeed the Sith Lord, that the Jedi should bring Skywalker with them. Yoda suggested that in a situation that it was true, the Jedi Master who was leading the operations should and would decide in the moment if they would bring Skywalker with them or not. If they wanted him, they could bring him. If not, he'd be ordered to stay behind. Mundi remembered all of this in an instant. He looked back at the other three Jedi. They were currently heading towards the LAAT, waiting for him. He paused. It wasn't unlike Mundi to do something erratic or even unreasonable, so what if he brought Skywalker with him? While Mundi had his faith in Skywalker, he didn't believe that Anakin would simply be enough. He used his communication device and called up Coleman Cash, who was inside the temple, and Shak Ti, who was currently meditating on the inside of the temple as well, and told them to hurry to the hangar bay. Anakin asked Mundi what he was doing, and the Jedi Master told Anakin that he was preparing to ensure the Jedi Order did not collapse. Mundi told Anakin to wait for him on the ship. Master Mundi used his communication device again and called upon Master Sindralik and requested that once the LAAT left the hangar bay, that the Jedi Temple prepare a lockdown situation. He suggested that it be mentioned as a drill, nothing more. It wasn't meant to be seen as anything other than a drill. They didn't want panic to ensue. Sindralik asked what the circumstances were, and Mundi said he couldn't say as of yet. He then requested that Sindralik had a unit of his best ready to leave the temple when he asked them to leave. Perhaps a group of 20 or so Jedi Temple guards, for when the mission was over that they could come to the coordinates. Sindralik took in the orders and informed Master Mundi that it'd be completely done immediately. As he finished his call, Coleman and Shak Ti rounded the corner in a hurried manner. They looked at Mundi and asked what it was, and he told them that he'd explain it on the way over. Once the Jedi were in the vessel, Ki-Adi took a look around. He noted that this group of Jedi would do. It was full of so much talent. 7 Jedi should be more than enough to handle the likes of a Sith Lord. Once the vessel was in the air, Mundi told the group that Anakin reported back to them that the Chancellor was a Sith Lord. He apparently had knowledge on how to use the dark side. The formation they would approach with would be spreading out across whichever room they found Palpatine in. It'd be a lot more difficult if it was in the section off part of his office, but they'd have to make it work. Skywalker asked what their approach would be. Mundi thought for a moment. He told Anakin and the rest of the Jedi that they needed to approach with aggression. While it typically wasn't the Jedi way, they needed to be prepared. Palpatine had control over the Republic for 13 years. There are a number of things that he could have ready for them when they came, especially if Palpatine knew they were coming. They had to be even more prepared than he was. Mundi told the Jedi that he would take point. As the leader of this operation, he was planning to go in first, and as long as Palpatine singled him out, they would be able to possibly jump him and kill him. Ki-Adi, despite being as cynical as he was, would rather take the brunt of the assault. His main concern was, if Palpatine was a Sith Lord, that they destroy the Sith. Of course, if he wasn't, they were out of luck, but they couldn't bank on that at the moment. The Jedi Council members understood their position on this and how they would be approaching the situation. As long as they stuck together, they'd be fine. Everyone was fairly confident, but they were all unsure about Skywalker. He was something they couldn't account for. Most of them had never worked with him before, so this was a little different. They obviously at this point were banking on trusting him, but most of the Jedi were honestly confused as to why Mundi decided to bring him along on this mission. It's not that Skywalker wasn't a good Jedi. Well, he was a good Jedi most of the time, but he was just an unknown factor. Not that any of the Jedi thought he would turn on them, but he might not be as eager to fight alongside them, is all. It didn't matter. They didn't have time to think about it. They were about to arrive. It was a large group of Jedi, and when all 7 ferried themselves out of the LAAT onto the landing platforms of the Republic Executive Building, they had to prepare for what they came for. Each Jedi had their own pre-battle meditations. They were all getting ready for the fight of their lives. All they had to do was be ready. For some of them, this pre-battle meditation was as simple as breathing. Others were swaying arms. The general consensus was they had to be ready. Out of the collective, Anakin was the least ready. He was so young and he didn't know what to expect. An entire war couldn't prepare him for this, and no Jedi since the Old Republic was ready or prepared for something like this either. They entered the room collectively behind Mundi as they fanned out across a small office space. Mundi told Palpatine that in the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, he was under arrest. Palpatine was very disappointed that it had to come to this, but when he turned around he saw 7 Jedi, including Anakin. This would be a good way for him to make an example for Anakin. He could see what he caused, because what these Jedi were about to face was something not a single one of them could prepare for. Palpatine analyzed a room full of Jedi, all responding with bone-chilling scowls. He told the Jedi that he was a Senate, as he isolated his first target. Amongst the Jedi present, Palpatine knew which one were the greatest duelists, and which ones weren't. Of course, for these Jedi, they hadn't heard of the Sith Howl, and if they did, they wouldn't recognize it until it was too late. Palpatine had one shot. He noted that Master Agan Kolar and Saesee Tiin were sitting next to each other on the far side of the room. They would be his first targets. Agan Kolar was renowned for his skill with the lightsaber, and he'd be a difficult adversary to fight. Palpatine acknowledged Fisto. He would be another fine target to attack, but it would leave him open. Mundi and Shaak Ti were right next to Kit Fisto. While all these were Master Jedi, some of them were more proficient with the lightsaber than others. Mundi, Kolar, and Fisto were the standouts. Saesee would be an easier second target to go after, and of course Anakin could watch what he brought onto these poor souls. Sidious cackled. Instead of one lightsaber, he ignited 2, and leapt across the room, unleashing an insidious howl. All the Jedi reacted, but none of them were fast enough. It didn't matter which Jedi Sidious targeted. That Jedi would have died regardless, and he went after the most experienced duelist in the group. Within the blink of an eye, Kolar was crying out pain and dying, and Saesee Tiin dropped to the ground. 2 down, 5 more to go. Mundi saw this and put his hand on Anakin's chest and got him out of the room as a means to protect him. While Ki-Adi Mundi had no real reason to assume Palpatine was trying to seduce Anakin, he was going to protect the Chosen One from this monster. Mundi was validated in his concerns as Sidious's blades came around to his face, and he narrowly avoided the strike and saved Anakin. He looked over at Anakin, whose eyes were wider than a sun. Skywalker held his blade up as Sidious pushed Mundi out of the room and defended a strike from behind his back. Sidious used the Force and launched Mundi from his feet into Anakin as the two of them flew out into the hall into the larger part of the office. Kit Fisto, Shaak Ti, and Coleman Kaj quickly got acquainted with the speed of the Sith Lord as they actively protected themselves and each other. Sidious was too quick for them and caught each of them off guard. Coleman was the first to drop, with Shaak Ti being cut across one of her laku and kicked from her feet. Kit Fisto forced Sidious into the hall between the 2 rooms. Sidious nearly landed a killing blow on Kit Fisto before Mundi blocked him. Sidious knew the time would come for a fight between him and Master Mundi. This was the other opponent he was most concerned about, and now they were fighting each other. He could see why he was revered as a great Jedi duelist. Mundi had the moves, and he quickly got in the offensive with Sidious. Anakin was right behind Mundi. While he may have not agreed with the Council for a lot of things, he didn't want them to die. It was something that he just wouldn't agree with. And while he wasn't in a total agreement with the procedure of the Jedi's entrance, he was even less in favor of Palpatine's reaction to them. Anakin and Mundi used each other as they sped into attacks against Sidious. The Darth Lord of the Sith cackled, watching the Jedi struggle against him. To Palpatine, using the lightsaber was a disservice to him. He was hindering himself with the lightsaber. He saw the blade as a barbaric thing that Knights of the Republic used to hold some sort of stature, when in reality, they were fools who knew nothing of the Force. To kill a Jedi with the blade was a dishonor to the Jedi in Palpatine's mind, and he fed off of it. Kit Fisto was quick to join the action again. Sidious spun around, smacking blades with Skywalker, Fisto, and Mundi. Of course, Shaak Ti wasn't far behind. She barreled out of the other room with her missing Laku and prepared to fight against Sidious. Anakin was going full speed at this point. He knew that in his own mind, this was life or death. He was engaged until he was kicked in the jaw and Sidious leapt up on top of the furniture and looked down at the 4 Jedi. Shaak Ti, Fisto, and Mundi spread out to protect Anakin. He looked around at them, protecting him, and he knew where his allegiance sat. Anakin ignited his blade again and rose to his feet. Sidious leapt down and sliced through one of Fisto's tails before engaging with Shaak Ti and Mundi. Because Ki-Adi Mundi was so aggressive, Sidious was splitting his time between the Jedi, but he was able to kill one of them. Kit Fisto ran forward with Shaak Ti by his side, and Sidious thrust his blade through Fisto and then used momentum to toss his dead body into Shaak Ti, who was knocked off her feet. Anakin quickly got in Sidious's face and was able to help Ki-Adi Mundi. Master Mundi cut through one of Sidious's blades, which at first seemed to be a blow that would aid them in their victory, when in reality, it was a seal for their inevitable doom. Anakin and Ki-Adi Mundi pressed further, when all of a sudden Mundi's movement slowed down and Anakin realized there was a gaping wound across his chest. Anakin's mouth hung, and he placed his blade up in front of him just in time to block a swing made by Palpatine. Anakin fell off his feet, and before he could be killed, Sidious drove his blade through Shaak Ti's chest. How predictable. Sidious smiled as she slid off of the blade. Palpatine wasn't going to kill Anakin. He was the future of the Sith. But Shaak Ti also wasn't going to kill Palpatine when she could save Anakin from dying. The Jedi were all too predictable. Shaak Ti lay on the ground next to Anakin and her eyes looked over at him. She squeezed out a final message and told Anakin to never become what he never was. Anakin looked at her confusedly for a moment as Sidious lowered his blade to Anakin's face and told him that he would join or watch the suffering begin. Skywalker was surrounded by a sea of dead Jedi Council members. Every single one of them were dead. What was he supposed to do? He wouldn't join. He lowered his brows and told Sidious that he would pay for what he did. Perhaps he would, but he wouldn't. Sidious tapped the button and a couple of royal guards entered the room, and they looked down to see a mess of dead Jedi. Sidious pointed at them and then to the corner of the room. Anakin would have to watch as everything unfolded around the galaxy. If Skywalker wouldn't join, then he would watch his order fall, and then he'd be forced to make a decision. Palpatine was wise enough to plan for every possible situation. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was paranoia, but because he did it, he was able to be ready for anything that came his way. As he sat in his seat, he looked over at Anakin with a smile, before turning back to the table and turning on a hologram. First, it was Commander Appo, then it was Commander Cody, Commander Rex, Commander Greek, Commander Wolf, Commander Blind, the list went on and on and on. As Anakin heard the names of all the commanders, he could feel the pain rising. The Force was out of balance. At first, he didn't put the pieces together, but slowly and surely he did. Realizing that Sidious wasn't just trying to torture him, he was actively wiping out Jedi across the entire galaxy. It finally clicked when he felt Plo Koon's death through the Force. The death was so provocative that Anakin immediately asked what Order 66 meant. Sidious smiled and looked over at Anakin and said that it was the execution of all Jedi officers for treason against the Republic. Anakin yelled out, but as he jumped to his feet, he was shocked until he fell down to his knees and eventually blacked out. On the other side of the city, the Founder First was struggling with the temple defenses, but eventually, the clones broke through with the help of the Coruscant Guard. Because the temple was already in a lockdown, bombing squads came in and tore everything apart. Residences, classrooms, training rooms, dining halls, everything. The clones had no intention of leaving any survivors. Syndralic was crucial to have around, and when he and his squad of guards were wiped out, it was all out panic. The tragedy is, because of the lockdown drill, the Jedi were all trapped. When they tried to make an escape, the clones had already filled through the halls of the temple and were ready. With the Coruscant Guard present inside the temple, they acted as a barrier while the 501st did what they did best, which was kill everything in sight. When Anakin woke up, he was in a different room. He was in an underground office inside the Senate building. It was the office where Palpatine could get on his chair to enter up into the larger Senate complex. He looked around. His vision was fuzzy. Palpatine was talking to someone over the communication device. The individual told Palpatine that the Senate was ready for his hearing. Sidious got up and walked over to Anakin and told him that the dark side is where he could have his home at. It did not need to be this way. The Jedi were gone, and he could still have his wife and save her. While the Jedi were nothing but burdens on the Force, the two of them could discover the secrets of immortality. Because Anakin was actually listening, he realized that Palpatine didn't know how to save a life. He raged, trying to get up, but Sidious held him in place with the Force and told him that there would be no need to resist. The Jedi were dead. Sidious looked at the guards and told them to make sure he didn't go anywhere. Palpatine and Mos Esmeralda got into the platform and it lifted up into the Senate chambers. Anakin was lost. He was so confused. How could he have not seen it? Like it was all laid out in front of him and he didn't see it not once. Palpatine was constantly lying to him, trying to force him in the wrong direction. It made Anakin question all of his decisions throughout the Clone Wars and throughout his tenure as a Jedi. These questions weren't about being a Jedi, but what he did because of Palpatine to lose the trust of those within the Council. If he had their trust, he wouldn't have ever been placed in this situation. Now, he was stuck with it. Things that could have been. Anakin listened to Palpatine's speech overtop him, and he couldn't help but think that everything he cared about inside of the Order was dead. All of his teachers, all of his friends, his mentor, and his apprentice. Ahsoka likely died to Rex, and Commander Cody probably killed Obi-Wan. None of them could have seen it coming, and as he listened to the speech going on over his head, he broke down. The two guards standing over him didn't move. They just watched as a man who was shown as a hero of the Republic break down in tears and in failure. A group of clone commandos were sent to Mustafar to execute the traitors, and not make a mention of it to anyone. With the Separatist Council gone, Palpatine would construct the first ever galactic empire. In place of the Republic, he was now the Emperor of the Galaxy. So many people applauded as the system crumbled to the feet of a dictator. So many not understanding the implications of these actions and what they would have for the larger galaxy as a whole. With it all done and over with, Anakin was left in Palpatine's office. He was being made a fool of. Sidious kept taunting him, asking him what he would do to fix this. Obviously, it was nothing, because if it was something, he would have already done it. For Palpatine, it was great. He could feel Anakin breaking, because the last thing Skywalker wanted was for the Republic to crumble out from under him. Sidious was now playing with Anakin's emotions because he was telling Anakin that without him joining the dark side, Padme would die alone. He was stuck down here, doing nothing. Palpatine told Anakin that he didn't want that for him. The worst part is, Skywalker was giving in. After the trauma of seeing 6 Jedi Masters slaughtered before his own eyes, Anakin was trying to resist the darkness, but his call was louder than ever before, and he was close to giving in, and becoming a servant of the darkness. The moment it crossed Anakin's mind, he felt a surge of familiarity, and through the doors walked Obi-Wan and Yoda. The two guards were flung into the wall and Anakin looked up with pride and happiness. They survived! Skywalker couldn't believe it. Obi-Wan and Yoda acknowledged Anakin and then turned to Sidious. They both ignited their lightsabers and prepared for the fight. With Anakin as a captor, they had to work as fast as possible. Of course, the bright side is Anakin was only locked in with hand restraints. They could break him out. Yoda walked in front of Obi-Wan and Sidious snarled. He was trapped. He walked around the corner, igniting his remaining lightsaber. Surely he could kill some more Jedi Masters. Plus, Sidious would love killing the Grand Master as well. That would make everything all the more perfect in his eyes. Anakin called out, telling the Jedi to watch out as Sidious flung himself across the room and engaged the two Jedi in a duel. Obi-Wan was quickly moved from his stance as he confronted Sidious for the first time. Yoda was quick to get in front of Obi-Wan to defend him. The speed and ferocity of Sidious was unmatched, and Yoda was keeping pace with him. It was no wonder that the other council members failed. Anakin watched with so much anxiety. He didn't want to lose Yoda or Obi-Wan, but he watched with intense fear. Sidious didn't miss a step. Every time he attacked, Obi-Wan lost his balance. For all of his abilities to defend himself, he was out of his element here. Sidious' speed was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The Dark Lord of the Sith quickly found himself kicking Obi-Wan off of his feet. Yoda and Sidious were one-on-one, and Obi-Wan had a chance to free Skywalker, but his lightsaber was nowhere to be seen. Obi-Wan cut through the binds and then turned back, leaping across the room and engaging Sidious, while Anakin began searching for his weapon, before he heard the sound of sizzling from the lightsaber. Yoda was thrusting up and cut across Sidious' shoulder, but it did not deter Sidious from the assault. Yoda was thrown across the room with electricity radiating off of his chest as he slammed into the wall and dropped down. Obi-Wan was stuck on his own, and Anakin was left frantically searching for his lightsaber. Obi-Wan was quick on his backpedal, repeating the steps he was making before, holding himself together every time his blade was hit by Sidious' blade. Obi-Wan lost his balance, and Sidious glided his blade past Obi-Wan and slammed it through Obi-Wan's chest. Obi-Wan coughed a little. His breathing stopped, and he looked down. Sidious laughed and used the Force to throw Obi-Wan into the wall. Kenobi slid down the wall and looked over at Anakin, whose eyes watered at the sight. He ran over to Obi-Wan's side. As he did, Yoda leapt up into the fight against Sidious again. Anakin held Obi-Wan's hand and told him to hold on, to hang on just a little longer. Kenobi looked at his student. He told Anakin that he could do this. Anakin asked what he meant, and before Obi-Wan could respond, Anakin felt a lightsaber slide into his hand. Obi-Wan patted Anakin's hand and nodded his head. He told his student that it was okay. Everything would be okay. He reminded Anakin to trust the Force. Anakin nodded his head and wiped a tear away from his face with his sleeve, as Obi-Wan's grip fell lifelessly back down to the ground. Anakin held Obi-Wan's lightsaber. The battle transpiring behind him was electric, and Anakin turned around to see the flash between good and evil. Sidious and Yoda, the avatars of the light and the dark, fighting against each other in a battle for the galaxy. Anakin looked down at his master's blade and ignited the weapon. He sat in the glow of the blade for a moment, before he turned around and lunged forward. Sidious and Yoda saw Anakin coming and they defended themselves, most specifically Sidious. Anakin and Sidious traded blows with each other as Yoda leapt in between, holding off Sidious from hurting Skywalker. The attack slowed down for a moment. Sidious asked Anakin if that was where his loyalties lay. Anakin looked at Yoda and told Sidious that he would never betray the Jedi. Sidious laughed with a smile, saying that he would die. Their fight continued and Anakin realized that he was right the night before when they lost to Sidious. He was afraid to fail, but Yoda was fighting with confidence right next to him, and this put his anxieties at ease. The three of them moved together, working as one coherent movement. Anakin was slipping, and both Yoda and Sidious could see it. He was weak in the moment, and Sidious took advantage of it as he slashed forward towards Anakin. Skywalker slid backwards, losing his balance as Sidious pressed forward. As Anakin was falling backwards, his lightsaber slashed across Palpatine's jaw and completely removed it. Yoda lunged forward and got in front of Anakin. The pain made Sidious anger and he slashed his blades around in a fury. Yoda was thrown back and forth, holding his blade in front of his face, trying to hold on. Losing balance when Anakin got back to his feet, he saw Sidious thrust his lightsaber through Yoda's stomach. Anakin spun his blade forward and Sidious was quick to block, but Anakin came prepared. His lightsaber spun around behind his back, blocking Sidious's strike before it slid around and slashed his blade through Sidious's chest. Skywalker pressed forward to make sure Sidious was finished. When the body appeared to be lifeless, Skywalker ran over to Yoda's side to see if he was alright, and he was choking on air. He looked up at Anakin as the Chosen One held onto him. Anakin begged Master Yoda to not go. Yoda smiled and shook his head. He told Anakin,
"Mourn me do not, miss me do not. The last of the Jedi you are, Master Skywalker."
Anakin held Yoda's little green hand and watched as Yoda held on before slowly vanishing before his eyes. Anakin looked down and Yoda's physical body vanished. He was so confused before noticing that Obi-Wan's body was gone as well. What had happened to them? Anakin didn't have time. He needed to escape before the clones came. He made his way back to Padme's residence and waited for her arrival. When she eventually came home, she was overwhelmingly happy to see Anakin and see that he was okay. They wrapped each other up in a large hug and told each other how happy they were to see each other again. On the couch next to Anakin were two lightsabers. One belonged to Yoda, one belonged to Obi-Wan. Padme asked what happened to him, and Anakin told her everything that happened. She was upset, and the two of them sat on the couch together. Padme asked whose lightsabers he had, and he revealed who would die to save him. Padme felt so terrible for Anakin and told him that she was here for him and she would always be by his side. He couldn't be more grateful for her in this time of need for himself. He was still stressed about the pregnancy thing, but when Padme gave a perfectly healthy birth, Anakin couldn't be happier. Padme told Anakin that she wanted to get away from the Republic, away from Coruscant, away from all of this. While she believed she had a voice, she was incredibly disappointed by her colleagues, and she felt that maybe the Republic was beyond saving. With the Jedi gone and the Emperor dead, the Republic was now called an empire, and it descended into chaos. Anakin understood, and he believed that it was the right decision. But he told Padme that he had other plans, and he wanted her thoughts on it before doing it. Padme supported him for his ideas, and Anakin thanked her for doing so. Before they left for Naboo, Anakin returned to the Jedi Temple and sent out a message to all the surviving Jedi taking refuge amongst the stars. He gave them coordinates for a place of refuge, and they could find him there. When they returned to Naboo, Padme and Anakin got the home situated for the twins, Luke and Leia. And to Anakin's surprise, a number of Jedi showed up at the location. However, what really surprised Anakin was that most of the Jedi who showed up were younglings or Padawans. The only one that wasn't was Quinlan Vos. Anakin's heart broke some more. He wondered how many survived the temple, and the truth was, not many. Most of those who did were the younglings that stood before him. It was such a heartbreak, but Anakin figured he might as well try and restructure the Jedi Order. He couldn't let it fall apart. He couldn't give up on it, because it was the Jedi who saved him from whatever Sidious had planned for him. He didn't want to imagine whatever it was. Anakin's Jedi enclave of Naboo would grow considerably, but it wouldn't be much, and it would take forever to undo everything that was done to it. Anakin, while taking the responsibility of fatherhood, became a Jedi Grand Master at the age of 22. It was a strenuous thing to be a part of, but he found a way to make it work. While the Empire crashed and burned under its own weight, Anakin and Padme began their life here on Naboo. Padme supported Anakin on this. Even though it was stressful, she understood where his heart was. He wanted to do right by those he cared about, and those who saved him. Ahsoka eventually did make her way to Naboo to join up with Anakin and help him. She of course learned about the twins and immediately was promoted to Auntie Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka would be given the opportunity to join up with the Jedi and she would take it. The code was forgotten because Anakin was essentially living a life outside the code anyways. But when Jocasta Nu returned seemingly from the dead, they were able to begin mediating what would be allowed and what wouldn't be. This was done because of the three remaining Jedi Masters and Knights, seeing how well Anakin did with his emotions and how they essentially helped save the Jedi Order from extinction. Eventually the Empire would pick up the pieces and restore itself as a republic. Padme, who kept tabs on it, would be happy to see the change, but happy that she kept herself and her family away from the carnage on Coruscant. The new Jedi Order at Naboo's Enclave would grow and continue to grow. It may have been a bit of a broken order, but with the guidance of Anakin Skywalker, Jocasta Nu, and Quinlan Vos, there'd be a chance for revival. It would take years and a lot of reconstruction to rebuild the foundation of the Jedi Order. But considering the Grand Master had two children who were already becoming the shining examples of the Jedi Order, of course without favoritism, they would grow into extreme powers and prowess, but with the ability to retain attachments, they'd be able to enjoy a family life with their mother and their father. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galavan Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, WeeWoo670, The Eternal Padawan, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Mad Matty Studios, Anakin003, Fordo's Legacy Star Wars, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, The Man with Three First Names, Dark Saint 46, Aaron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patreon. Obviously, we got a lightsaber giveaway going on. Go hit the thing down below. There's a little link down below. Go click on the link. Go sign up for the lightsaber. We're giving away 3 lightsabers for 90,000 subscribers. I'm so excited. Let's go, guys. Let's start the story real quick, and then we'll get on with it. So the main premise of the story, and I know it's going to make no sense because everyone's coming into this video like, oh yeah, Ki-Adi Mundi's a psychopath. And yeah, he's a psychopath. However, I wanted him to screw up so badly that it actually made Anakin stay in the light. And that was kind of the irony of it, because, like, Mace Windu, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like him, but Mace Windu, like, executed everything perfectly. If Anakin didn't show up, he would have arrested Palpatine, and that probably would have been resolved. However, in the other scenario, Ki-Adi Mundi messes up so badly that Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side, consistently rejects the dark side, and then becomes the hero, which is like a funny, sick irony, and that's kind of why I did it, because it's kind of like ironic, and that's literally like the whole premise. It's like he messes up so badly because he's like, oh yeah, if I bring 7 Jedi, we can kill Sidious, and then they just lose. Because like, they're all great duelists, but like, Windu or Yoda is probably who could beat Palpatine in this time, and again, I proved that in the end. Obi-Wan gets sacrificed, literally everyone dies. It's really kind of tragic. Like, the Jedi Order just gets completely, like, erased. But, like, they have a chance for revival, and I also thought, like, the whole idea of a Jedi Enclave on Naboo, kind of similar to Luke's Jedi Order in the sequels, is kind of, like, the idea and the direction they would go in here. But all up to you. Tell me what you thought down below. Anyways, I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.